Wonderful. All right. I would like to welcome everyone to the first in our brand new upcoming series of monthly panel events. As the Nu Chi Upsilon chapter president of Bushnell University, I would like to welcome you. My name is Marcy Smaha. I am a third-year student in the program with a God willing graduation date of December 11th. I've got my celebration box, so it has to happen now. I mean, really, it's pretty much a done deal. It's just a couple minor details. But this is a wonderful thing to be able to lead this chapter as we are building up our activities and bringing our presence back to an actual student and professional organization. And Jessica, John, Denise, I want to thank all three of you for your support and for being here today, putting back into this organization and giving your expertise to us. So I just thank all three of you very much for being here. I'd like to take a moment to introduce the rest of my leadership team. My president-elect, Tiffany, she will be stepping up once I graduate to be president, and I'm so very, very grateful that she is here this evening. Michaela is my marketer / the committee chair of our panel events. And where is Erica? See, I'm looking at my screen. There she is. There's Erica. Erica is our chapter treasurer. We also have a secretary, Laura, but she is unfortunately having some health challenges, and so she will not be able to join us today. But all of us wish to welcome and thank everyone for participating in this event this evening. Okay. I would like for you three, Jessica and John and Denise, to have an idea of who you're speaking to this evening. So I would very much like it if all of us listeners would be able to just take a brief moment to say your name and what year you are in the program so that you have an idea of your audience, right? And so I will just kind of call out your name, and as you do, if you would please unmute yourself and just kind of say hi and say what year you are, I would appreciate that. So Michaela, how about you start?
Hi everyone, my name is Michaela James and I am a second-year CMHC student.
Thank you. Sonia?
Hello, I am a second and final year CMHC student.
Excellent. Tiffany?
Hi, I'm Tiffany. I'm a second-year student.
Awesome. Katrina?
I'm Katrina. I'm a second-year student.
Erica?
Hi, I'm Erica Mayo, and I am a second-year student.
Awesome. Rebecca?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Plant, and most of the people are my cohort, so we've just started our second year.
Excellent. Rose?
I'm Rose, and I'm another second-year student.
Awesome. And Bodie?
I'm Bodie. I'm class of 2019 graduate. I'm in my first year of practice as a counselor.
Excellent. So as an audience member, you have some fellow private practicer there and a couple of us that are looking to step into the business world within a couple months. And then pretty much everybody else is in wrapping up their practicum and getting ready to go into internship, looks like. So there's a lot of turf yet to be covered. For the evening, when we sent out the invitation, people had the opportunity to read your bios for Jessica and John and Denise. There's Dominic. We'll let him in. Dominic is in my cohort. Fashionably late. Hey, Dominic, welcome. If you would please unmute and say what year you are, please.
Oh, I graduate next month.
Excellent. We'll have hopefully one more joining us soon, but the general idea for tonight is to just kind of have this conversation. We have some questions for all three of you, for Jessica, Denise, for John, and then some that we just that Michaela divvied up so that not everybody is answering the same question However, if someone else ends up with a question that you really want to field, please kind of jump in and let's kind of make this a dialogue. I'd like to ask everyone to please, that's not a presenter, please stay muted, to type in your questions or to, deliberately unmute to talk versus just having background noise. But please do leave your cameras on so that it just helps increase engagement, and it will enable you to, it's a little bit more like we're actually meeting in person. So I encourage you to do that. If something comes up or if your environment becomes too distractible, then of course, feel free to mute out and darken your screen. But I invite you to please stay visible throughout the evening. So as we dive into this, kind of the biggest question for all three of you is, why did you decide to go into private practice? And with that, what's the one thing that maybe surprised you the most or maybe caught you unprepared as you implemented that decision? So Jessica, if you'd be willing to start.
Yeah, sure. So I have always known that private practice is the route that I ultimately wanted to go. And that was mainly, for a couple of reasons. First, I like to have control over my lifestyle. So being in private practice allows me to control my schedule, the types of clients that I see, what I'm doing with my time a little bit more. Also, just the independence of really getting to choose kind of what direction you want your practice to go and what you want to be able to focus on was really appealing to me. And the third thing is really just having the opportunity to work with the exact types of clients that I want to work with and who really benefit from my work and feel is sort of resonate with my approach. I think, besides the lifestyle stuff, that's probably the most appealing thing for me, is really being able to work with exactly who I want to work with. And hopefully, that helps with having a career that has a lot of longevity instead of, being in positions where I'm asked to overwork or I'm not working with people that I feel really passionate about. So part of this too is sort of decreasing burnout and making this something that I can do long-term and adapt throughout my lifetime. And what was the second part of the question?
What's one thing that took you by surprise?
I was pretty prepared for this. I've been doing research for a long time and talking to different practitioners and kind of hearing different perspectives. So I wasn't surprised by a whole lot. Maybe the confidence part of it, I think going into private practice right after graduating, I've been working in mental health for 10 years, but it is different being a counselor and being sort of alone doing your thing. So it took a little bit of time to really start to feel, and I'm still working on it, feeling confident in not just my skill, but sort of my skill as like a business person and my ability to do this work on my own and to support myself. So that's probably the biggest thing, is just I was surprised because I was feeling so confident. I was surprised when I actually started doing it, like, oh gosh, this is a little scarier than I thought.
Wonderful, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
John, how about for you? Why did you go into private practice, and what's one thing that surprised you the most about that decision?
I think when I was, so I graduated from Bushnell when it was Northwest Christian College, so about 15 years ago. Wow. So I've held on to my master's degree, and it's opened a lot of doors for me in a lot of different areas. I spent some time in the public sector, working in various mental health research capacities as a research assistant, and then even went to the private sector and worked in business. And so for me, I think a lot of what Jessica said resonates with me. I got to a stage where, I always found myself working for people and kind of scratching my head going like, gosh, I think I could do this better. And then I got to a point where I was like, well, if I think that, maybe I should put my money where my mouth is. And so I just did it. I took stock kind of later in life of, I need to stop reinventing myself and kind of chasing 3-year grant programs or, more responsibility working for someone else, and to just go out on my own. What do I have that I can contribute and feel reasonably sure of in terms of my skill set and in terms of longevity? Because it's not my plan really to retire. That doesn't sound like an end game to me, to kind of sit on a beach somewhere. So what can I do as I kind of age? Well, I can sit in a chair and talk with people, well into my 70s. And so that's what I decided to do. I didn't want to really work for an agency. I was kind of past that point in my professional career. And so I found an office space, I found a supervisor, and I had already started a business, a consulting business on the side. So doing the business end of it wasn't super surprising. I think what has been kind of most surprising is how many people are in your corner when you tell them, like, hey, I'm going to start this thing, and you talk to counselors you've known, counselors I've gone to, people in the community that I've known, just how excited they were. Like, oh, this is fantastic. How can I help? How can I send people to you? How can I refer clients to you? And that's been really surprising. I kind of just thought I was going to have to, grind it out and figure out how to get myself out there, and really leveraging the people that I know in the community to send people my way. I think that's been both the most kind of delightful part of it and the most surprising.
Excellent. There was more people in your corner than you realized.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, Denise, why did you decide to go into private practice, and what was surprising about that for you?
I knew going into graduate school I would ultimately want a private practice. I worked in corporate for a very long time, and I'm a big believer people don't leave good companies, they leave bad managers. So if I'm a bad manager, to me, there's something to be said. So I had the good fortune that we owned a building and I had space, and it was very easy for me to get set up and to get started. And having a business background, business didn't scare me, it excites me. And I have a primarily referral only practice. And as people know, when you're bold enough to go in private practice as an LPC registered intern, you're pay practice. Of course, you can provide super bills and things like that, so clients can get reimbursed by their flex spending or health or their HSA accounts, but predominantly that is your practice. So for me, I liked the idea of continuing to do that in my corporate life. I'd done executive coaching for a long time, and I think a lot of the executives I'd worked with had encouraged me to do that. And so I'd already done some executive coaching already, and as a practice. So then once I got my graduate degree and expanding my practice just to see different types of people made natural sense. It was kind of an natural and organic fit for me. And what was surprising? I don't know that anything was particularly surprising to me about it. I'm trying to think. There wasn't anything of particular surprise to me. I think what Jessica said, there is a lot to be said that you can set your pace and the lifestyle you want to create. And I think it is our responsibility to take care of our own vessel so we are whole and healthy and well to hold such sacred space for other human beings. And when we're in private practice, we can learn what that pace looks like for ourselves. That's a bit of that for me. And I think what John said, after you've worked for other people for so long, and for me, I was a manager and a leader and a boss person and lots of other positions. And often I had that same sentiment, like, well, I can do this. I mean, if they can do it, I can certainly do it. So I think sometimes just having some chutzpah and some confidence and saying, I'm going to go get this done, and we go get it done.
Wow. Excellent. So Denise, you and John, it sounds like, both of you come from a pretty strong business background and have had a fair bit of experience in the field Well, and Jessica also, there's experience in the field, but it's different from an actual LPC, goal of LPC private practice. So this next question is, what's your advice for students and graduates, who want to go the private practice route, who may or may not have that kind of a background? Denise, if you would start with that one.
So I think everybody has to be really honest with themselves, right? You have to know your own bandwidth. You have to know how much do you want to earn? How much do you want to work? So I think having a really honest self-assessment of what I need to make ends meet or what I don't need, or so that's just a very practical kind of place, because if a practitioner is stressed and worried, people will sense that, right? And they probably won't show up as their best self for their clients. So there's that element, right? I also think the other part that I did well and I helped other people do well is to really plan early, right? So have everything for licensure like ready on the dime to go the moment we graduate, the moment I got my transcript complete and my exam results came in, so that I was ready to hit the ground running. So I graduated in May and I was seeing clients within 4 weeks in June. So I was very organized in that way. There's things you're going to have to learn, like, do you want to use QuickBooks for your accounting? Do you want to use this? Do you want to do that? There's all sorts of elements of business. I don't do a huge amount of marketing or anything like that. That's also another element that people have to think of. I think there's so many components of business planning that you have to do. And I didn't want to work full-time immediately after graduate school. So I was also very clear about the type of hours I wanted to work. I did not want to come out of grad school immediately practicing full-time. I went through some major life events that I could have not predicted in my graduate program. And I wanted to have some time to take care of me. And I had the resources and the ability to do that. So I felt really fortunate. So I was very honest with myself. And I think probably that's, for me, the most important aspect of it.
Thank you. John, how about for you? What advice would you give to a fresh graduate or someone who's about to graduate?
Yeah, I say that, like, go into it with your eyes open. I agree with Denise. I think you have to do your research. I think if it's something you want to do, you have to figure out what resources you're going to draw from to pay for your life. And so you need to know like what your expenses are, right? Because you're not, you will likely experience growth, but it's going to be gradual and it requires patience to build a practice. And so it's pretty unlikely that in the short term, you're going to be making enough money to, pay for life, right? I was fortunate when I started. I had a job consulting. I had projects that were still ongoing. And so as those ramped down, I could slowly build my practice, but there was still a gap there. When the consulting projects went away, I had to figure out how to pay the bills. And fortunately, my wife and I had the resources to where we could say like, hey, we can kind of eat it. We can kind of eat into our savings for, I kind of gave myself a 18-month to 2-year window to try to kind of build up my practice. And we took some twists and turns along the way that I can kind of get into. But yeah, I think being really realistic about like how much money you need to make and what it's going to take to get there. And then also, as Denise said, just being prepared, get your paperwork in order. Obviously I had a 15-year gap. So for me, it was just a matter of finding a place, figuring out if I was going to use practice management software, which I recommend with some caveats. And then just kind of proceeding and kind of, I think it is good to plan as much as you can ahead of time. Some of the things you can kind of pick up along the way. So figuring out QuickBooks and how you're going to, figure out the business finance end of it, you can pick up because, you're going to start maybe with 2 or 3 clients. And so you have time to kind of catch up. It doesn't need to be at the starting line all at the same time. But yeah, you do need to move forward and plan and just be really realistic about what it takes to build up a clientele.
Excellent. Thank you. Jessica, what advice do you have?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll second everything that's been said already. And then a couple more things. You know, when you're doing your research, my advice is to just start researching, right? What do I need for a private practice? What does it take, you know, to draw from multiple sources? Because I mean, one thing that's good to be aware of, I think, is that the practitioners that I've talked to all seem to have kind of a slightly different take on having a private practice. And it can be really sort of intimidating and discouraging sometimes. If you're just drawing from one person or from a couple of people. So I would just encourage you to kind of like have a wide range of people that you're getting information or help from, and that you're like gathering research from in terms of what you need for your private practice and what that process is. The other biggest thing as far as the business part of it goes is getting clients. So like Denise said, because we're LPC interns, we don't have that insurance stream. So I think the biggest thing you have to start to research is is learning basically like sales and marketing, right? If this is something that you want to be like an actual sustainable source of income for you, we have to learn how to get clients, which we didn't learn in graduate school. So there's lots of like nice free resources to start with out there. There's lots of like business coaches and people on Instagram and Facebook who are talking about like, you know, how do you write compelling messages for your clients? Like, how do you write a compelling web page for your clients? How do you write compelling Facebook posts for your, you know, your business page? So starting to look at some of that stuff, because like John said, it's going to build up really slowly. So, so you have time to kind of, you don't have to have that all at the beginning, but you do want to start to build and generate like sources of clients. That I knew that this was going to happen, that, you know, that there was no magic way to get clients, but I think if you're not prepared for that, that can be really surprising. So unless you have additional resources too, as far as income goes, like a partner or you have savings, you're probably going to have to look at having other income sources besides your private practice as you build as well.
Okay, thank you. You know, you kind of, a lot of these questions, as you may imagine, are very money specific. None of us, I can actually speak fairly confidently that none of us are in this for the money. We don't go to learn to be a counselor because we want to make bank, and yet paying for life, as you so aptly put it, John, is a real thing. So if we kind of talk about the nitty gritty a little bit about kind of that private pay idea, do you offer a sliding scale? How did you determine that? How do you apply that? Kind of what are the challenges of choosing to do that or not? Jessica, how do you handle kind of that aspect?
Yeah, so I think this is a really personal question. And, you know, like Denise said, you're really going to have to kind of look at yourself and see what's my tolerance here? What are my preferences? Like, practitioners have such a wide range of views on sliding scales, but I'll share sort of what I feel like is right for me and what I do in my practice. I knew I didn't want to have a sliding scale. And the reason I didn't want to have one is because I hear that people tend to just pick the lowest price. So, you know, why not just set my rate at the lowest rate that I'm willing to accept from people, right? Instead of having a scale. Part two is I don't really want to deal with determining who gets to fall where on the scale. So I'm not interested in getting the lowest rate, and I'm also not interested in working through that with people. So I looked at the sliding scale that LPC interns usually have, which in Eugene appears to be between like $60 and $100 on average. And I just set my rate right in the middle. So I've been charging people $80, and that felt kind of like a good compromise for me because I don't want to have a sliding scale, but I also, you know, I also need clients and want to sort of make my services more accessible at this point as I'm growing my practice. So that's where I'm at with that. And I think it's, like I said, a really personal decision and something that you're kind of continually reevaluating as you're seeing like what are people willing to pay? Like, what do they say when they come in? Are they asking for a lower rate? Or are they expecting to pay more? And I kind of ask people those questions like, oh, you know, how is this for you? Like, were you expecting more? Were you expecting less? Just to kind of start to gather some data about that. And then I'm noticing like, as my confidence is building, I'm probably going to be raising my rate. And as I learn more about sales and marketing and how to attract people who want to see me, people who aren't just price shopping for any therapist, like I'm offering them the very specific thing that they're looking for, that's probably going to allow me to raise my rate as well. So those are the things I thought about. And I think like everyone kind of has to make that decision for themselves.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing kind of your rationale. This is, I recognize this is a personal decision, and it is going to vary from person to person. And we appreciate all three of you being willing to kind of, you know, crack open the lid and be like, here's the inner workings. So we just really appreciate that. John, how did you handle the decision of what to charge?
Yeah, not very well initially. So I'm kind of, I did select it's not technically a sliding scale, because a real sliding scale, you would do kind of income sort of means testing, right? You would collect income information, and then based on a percentage, you would set the scale, right? What the advice that I got is, if you want to do a sliding scale, and you don't want to deal with, you know, collecting income statements of any kind, then you can do exactly what Jessica described. And so I set my minimum, like what do I feel okay accepting at about $60, right? And if I got that, great. If people were able to pay more, then my standard fee was $110 for a clinical hour. And what I found is that the vast majority of my clients pay my minimum fee. But there are some who will pay my full fee and don't even balk at it. They don't blink, right? So I'm glad that I have kind of both ends of the scale there. And I've kind of squared it up in my mind that that those who can pay are in some ways subsidizing those who can't, right? It kind of evens out to a certain degree. And what I have also found is that while the majority of the people that I see do pay the minimum, there are some people that struggle with it from a kind of an internal issue. They know, like, oh, well, your fee is 110, but you do offer kind of a scale, and there's some conversation that happens, like Jessica said, that then we can start processing kind of. I can learn some information about how they process stress, or what their feelings are, how they even associate with money or whatnot, that is actually kind of fruitful in getting to know them. And then I always kind of take the philosophy with people, because I've had a number of people say, like, well, I can do like 90, but then I can only see you like once every other week or once every 3 weeks or something like that. And I'm like, wait, if you just pay me $60, can you come in weekly? And then, oh yeah, I can do that. And it's like, well, then let's just do that, because A, I need the hours, and B, it builds momentum, right? And so just, you know, I don't know that there's a right answer. I know that Jessica and another marriage and family therapist who just got licensed, he was with my supervisor, do the same thing. It's $80. If you can pay 80, great. If you can't pay 80, there's a cleanliness to that. There's kind of squared edges to that I really like. It just makes it easy. I kind of went with the scale, and it works. And the nice thing about being in private practice is that I can rethink it and reset. I have the freedom to do that. So that's the other thing I kind of appreciate about it. But don't be afraid to kind of guess. And then again, you start out with 2 or 3 clients. If you kind of call it wrong or it feels a little off, all you got to do is readjust on your professional disclosure statement and go again. And if you got it wrong with 3 clients, you can decide, well, I'm either going to raise your rate or I'm going to grandfather you in, or some combination thereof. Yeah.
Marcy, could I add something real quick that just kind of sparked for me as John was talking?
Please do.
Yeah, I love that he brought that up about, because like it's kind of our process too, right? Like how comfortable are you having that conversation with people? So many counselors have hangups around money and around charging people for this service. So you really have to like look at your process around that and see like, what are you comfortable with? And you might have to do some work around that too. I'm getting coaching for my private practice, and the money thing is such a huge part of that, like helping us become comfortable and like really looking at our beliefs around this. So, consider, like, look at your perspective too in this mix.
Excellent, thank you. And John, also, you bring in some interesting points about the PDS, and I might have a follow-up question later, but to stay on this topic, Denise, would you be willing to kind of share your rationale between what you charge and what that looks like?
Sure. I think money is just a part of doing business. And because I was a sales manager and I worked in corporate for so long, I am not uncomfortable at all about setting a price or asking for a price. If I go to seek a professional service, I expect to pay what they are worth because I value their expertise. Therefore, in a reciprocal setting, I expect as a professional that people will pay me for my expertise. Granted, in a therapeutic relationship, we give and take, right, as well. So for me, I set my rates right out of the gate because having formerly done executive coaching for so long, I earned a lot and not a modest amount. I don't believe in the mindset that therapists can't make a healthy, abundant career in the financial realm. They can. Every therapist that I know makes over a 6-figure salary, that are working, that are happy, that have fulfilling lives. So for me, there's some things that, like when I came to graduate school, I was only one of the few people who did not come from anything in mental health. APA, I was like, what in the world is APA? I didn't know anything about mental health. What I did know is I knew how to manage whole people. And I was curious about the scientific efficacy behind how come when I managed whole people, I didn't seem to have turnover. And there were things I just was curious to learn about the brain, about the body, about that mind, body, spirit connection. Therefore, for me setting pricing, I set my pricing initially was $100 to $150 per session for a therapeutic hour. I charge more for an intake. I charge $225 to $250, I think was my original for intake. And I do a longer session. I do offer a sliding scale. I did not understand sliding scale. I remember when I moved to Eugene and there was all this sliding scale. I was like, what the hell is sliding scale? I'd never seen that in the large cities I'd lived in. So it was very perplexing to me. And then when I read the Code of Ethics for the ACA and the Code of Ethics for the NBCC, one of the things they do ask is for us to make counseling available for people who don't maybe have the financial means. So when I really took that to heart and I discerned on some of these things, knowing in my private practice, I was not going to be taking insurance and it would be self-pay. I really had to discern what was appropriate for me and for the clientele. And actually, it was several of the universities in our state that came to me and said, would you consider working with graduate students? And so that is where I offer my sliding scale, is working with graduate students in various programs in our state. I feel very comfortable offering a sliding scale there because I am so committed and believe so deeply that we as clinicians, and I said this earlier, must keep our own vessel clean and we must do our own work. And so one way we do that is we make it accessible to other professionals so that we have a healthy and well group of professionals who become our colleagues in this state and across the US and across the globe. So that is how I offer a sliding scale. And I really, I've changed that sliding scale some based on what's my availability and what's my capacity. I generally try to hold 5 spots. That's what I've decided for graduate students. So that's a very direct answer. And since Jessica started it out being very direct, you get us all being very transparent and direct. And I assume this is not getting posted on YouTube. But
promise the recording will stay with CSI. We're just, it's just us.
So, and I have since, and as Jessica and John said, we have to feel comfortable and aligned on the inside about what we charge. I do not have problems charging, and I don't think anyone should. When we have done our work and done our due diligence and we offer a service that somebody wants, I don't scoff at going to a chiropractor, an acupuncturist, or a naturopathic doctor, or a specialist, etc. So I trust that other humans have that same fundamental mentality, right? And money is simply an exchange to me. I mean, it's just an exchange of how we work in life. So yeah, I hope was that everything that you asked in the question, Mercy?
Yes.
I do charge more for couples. I don't know if I said that. I used to not, but I've changed my own feeling on it, actually. So, and what were you going to say, Mercy? I apologize if I cut you off.
No, kind of an add-on question Michaela typed in. How do you handle no call, no shows, cancellations, kind of all those, the little gray areas of the therapy world?
So my colleague says, panelists, if it's all right, since I might unmute on, I'm not currently muted. If it's all right, I'll take that first, and then I'll look forward to hearing what you say. I have it in my, I know we are required to do a PDS, right, as LPCs, as an LPC registered intern, and as an LPC now, we're required to do that. So part of that says, if we don't give somebody a PDS, we cannot ethically and legally charge them for a session, period, full stop. That is according to our Oregon Board of Licensed Professional Counselors and Therapists. That's number one. Number two is we are not required to do an informed consent. However, in my informed consent, I do have them sign that, and I do have, I had my attorney go over everything and all of my documentation. So I specifically state I have a 24-hour cancellation fee. It is a full price of a session unless there is extraneous circumstances or an emergency, and that is my decision as the clinician.
Thank you. We're going to return to the topic of lawyers and technical details, but John, how do you handle that policy in terms of cancellations, no shows?
Yeah, no shows I charge my fee. If they cancel in less than, like, I give them 24 hours, right? If you can give me 24 hours, then I'm not charging a fee, right? But if you contact me like an hour before, then I consider that a late cancellation, and I'm going to ding you half the rate, right? And that's just, it's a issue of respect. It's an issue of my time. It's an issue of being able to slot somebody into that, in enough time, giving that availability to someone else. So yeah, I don't have a problem, and I make it clear in the PDS, and then I outline kind of a billing and cancellation policy form that I have them fill out, and that makes it just kind of outlines it, clearly. We talk about it, and nobody's really had. I've actually been really, really fortunate in my private practice. I started back in February, and I think I've had cancellations, and I've had late cancellations that I've charged for, and nobody balks at the fee. And I think I've only had one no-show in my private practice. So I feel really fortunate that I don't have to, my clients just kind of show up, and if they don't, they call me with enough time to make adjustments. So I feel fortunate in that regard.
Excellent. Jessica, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I've only been open for 3 months, so I don't have, a large sample size for this. But this is something I'm experimenting with. so I have the same as John and Denise, 24 hours cancellation, or I charge the full fee. And that's what it says in writing. In practice, what I've been experimenting with is, I mean, this might be because I don't have a full, I don't know if this would be different if I had like a full private practice, right? But right now, if people can reschedule during the week, then I haven't been charging them. And that's just what has kind of felt right so far. But in writing, it does say, so I have that ability, right, to say like, hey, yeah, it's 2 hours before the appointment, like I'm going to need the full fee. Or I can say, hey, you know, normally I'd charge the full fee, but can we get this rescheduled and I won't charge you. But like I've left that, I haven't put that in my policy so I can make that decision. And I'm going to experiment with that and see how it goes. But so far I feel okay about it.
Nice. And that's part of.
I did similarly. Yeah, it's a different game when you have 3 people, or if you're slammed, if you've got 6 or 7 people you've got to deal with, and it's like, sorry, like I can't reschedule you later in the week because I don't have availability. But when you're like, okay, I got 3 people, and then the rest of the time I'm staring at, you know, the wood paneling in my office. Yeah, you can afford to be flexible. You can afford to be a little bit lenient. I agree also with something that Denise mentioned. I think it's worth mentioning because I've done consulting in this town. Eugene's kind of unique. I like the boldness of saying this is my fee, and I'm moving more towards that as my slate gets fuller. I feel more and more comfortable doing that. Like, I'm a professional. You go to the dentist, you pay the dentist, right? Eugene's this weird place for consultants in particular to do that kind of thing. You go up to Portland and nobody bats an eye at whatever it is that you charge. As a consultant, as a business consultant, you can charge hundreds and hundreds of dollars per hour. Nobody cares. Bigger markets, same thing. They expect to pay for services. Some of the businesses, and I think it trickles down into your private practice business, it's a weird environment for that. It's a little provincial that way, where people kind of do back of the napkin math in some way that they just don't do in Portland or Seattle, right? Where things are a little loosey-goosey. I don't know if it's, you know, the 1960s legacy of it all or what. And so I like kind of being bold and not being afraid to just say, like, this is what I charge. And then also taking people as they come and kind of having some situational awareness of where they're at. And if you can afford, and again, this goes back to what I said before, you're not doing anybody any favors if you undercut yourself and then can't sustain your life, right? You're not providing services to anybody if you can't run a sustainable business. But if you can flex and you can work with that, and you feel like that's something you want to provide to the community, by all means do so, but do it with your eyes open. Have the spreadsheet open to know, like, hey, if I take this guy at $30 a week, then I'm not able to pay my mortgage. Like, you know, that's the kind of, make the determination that feels right to you, but make it with all of the information in front of you. Don't just do it. Don't try to fly blind or by your gut, I guess is what I would say.
Excellent. That kind of ties into business size and getting into the practice of practice. How do you determine how many clients to have? What's the ideal? And how do you find those clients, right? This is kind of leaning in toward what Jessica talked about, finding that niche and being able to market toward that niche. John, would you be willing to talk a little bit about how what is your niche? How do you market for the people that you want to work with?
I wish I kind of had one. Okay, so that's not true. I say that, and for whatever reason, you know, I didn't go into private practice. I graduated from a Christian college. I didn't go into private practice thinking I am going to be a Christian counselor, and yet that's kind of the field that I've fallen into. And primarily it's because of the people that I did outreach to in terms of I don't even really call it marketing. It is, but I don't do anything really on Facebook. I don't do social marketing. I really don't do much of anything. Other than I had an old school counselor who worked with pastors in the area. And he said, when I started, I sent letters to pastors. I threw a couple business cards in there, and I would send out 10, 20 a week, right? And that's was my marketing. And so I did that. And I'll be damned if after about 30 or 40 letters, I had coffee with about maybe 10 or phone conversations with about 10 that you actually could reach and talk to. I had coffee with about 6. And I would say that 3 relationships that came out of that account for probably 98% of my business. So, and these are people that I have coffee with on a regular basis. They ask me questions about like, hey, this couple came to see me, I have this question. So it's a real collaboration of peers. And I could probably name 2 of them that have provided the majority of my business, and a third that kind of brings up the rear. So I wouldn't get too, I mean, you can do, if your mind works with, you know, I'm the whole social media thing I'm kind of allergic to. And so I don't think of marketing in that sense. I'm in a relational business and I want word of mouth referrals. I want people who know me to send people to me because they trust me and they know me, right? So that's just kind of how I built it. And it was slow, but then it kind of blew my mind. Like it kind of grew, and it's really grown, I would say, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, like more than I thought it would by this time in the year.
Wow, Denise, I see you nodding.
I was just giggling when he said he's allergic to social media. I think that's just very charming and very real. I don't use social media either. So the question was, Marcy, can you restate it, please, so I answer specifically and stay on point since I'm giggling so much? John, thank you for the laughter. It's good for my soul.
Any advice for marketing in particular, or for figuring out how to reach your niche?
Yeah. So I have to be real. My style is very transparent. So to be very transparent, and in my corporate life, when I was on the marketing team for a large Fortune 100 company, I go against everything that I know about marketing from my corporate days and from all my business background in marketing, although my background was business administration and accounting and in high tech and in high finance. I'll be honest, I know all the tools and skills about niche marketing and how you narrowly focus to market a certain way. Again, like I said, I did not want to work 5 days a week when I graduated from graduate school. I was very clear about that. We, for our lives, we made a decision, and I only wanted to work a limited amount of days. And I wanted to work with clients who wanted to work, right? I wanted to work with clients who want to go deep, who want, I mean, since I studied trauma and grief and attachment, there were certain things I really wanted. I am blessed and fortunate that because I had my corporate life and I was already doing executive coaching, and I continued to do it during graduate school, because that executive coaching does not require a license. I had a very successful career of people that know me and know how I help them elevate their career and discern decisions. So like I said, for me, I have a few really close friends throughout the state who have been referral sources to me. I have more business than I actually would want. And also, I'm probably a slightly different, I don't know for sure, but John and Jessica, please correct me if I'm wrong. There came a point that we made a decision for our family that I was like, you know what, I want to get done with my hours at a certain time. So I decided for a very strict certain period of time, I would work at a couple clinics had recruited me. Where I did my clinical internship, they wanted me to work for them. I think being able to provide Medicaid, and I'd always build Medicaid in my clinical internship. So, and in a private practice as an LPC registered intern, we could not continue to build Medicaid. I had like 25 clients that really wanted to continue to see me. And so as these clinics reached out to me, I thought, okay, if it's meant that I can work part-time or less, I will still continue my private practice at my normal 3 days a week at a maximum. And I will, for a very specific period of time, 12 to 20 months, we made a very specific decision. And if I could have my hours done within that, the minimum we can get our hours is 2 years, and we have up until 5 years. And since I had certain goals in my personal life and my professional life, and an opportunity came to me, I made the decision to do that for a certain amount of time. And I was really glad because I was able to provide continuation of care for Medicaid clients. Now, being that I've been licensed, fully licensed, there's a lot of other options I can choose, right? But I don't use social media either. The only place I've ever done any per se marketing is Psychology Today, but honestly, it is the word of mouth of a few of my personal friends who I also am entrusted with seeing their like teenagers, for example, or people in their family that I have seen. So I am blessed that and I have other resources that want to give me more business. And I have been the one going, hang on, I don't want more than what I got. And I have a wait list for clients. And now that I'm going to bill certain particular insurance, which that is one thing I very heavily researched, as Jessica talked about researching, is and how I want to do that and what my intention is, how I want to grow my practice. So that I'm very intentional and thoughtful and prayerful, to be totally honest about, to say what's going to work for me and how do I want to serve in this community and beyond, like and I think we have to also at some point probably we'll talk about telehealth and payment and how things have changed with COVID. But so I don't do any very directed marketing, to be, like I said, to be super honest, it's not how I've chosen to do my practice at all. That might change.
Thank you for the transparent answers, both John and Denise. So Jessica, you are at more at the beginning of the private practice journey, graduated a year ago, almost, and have been on the front end of starting and building a practice. So what have you discovered as you've started doing this? Like, what kind of overhead costs have you run into? What do you see for your dreams for your practice? How many clients a day do you want to see?
So let's see. As far as overhead goes, now's actually a really great time, I feel like, to be starting a private practice, because you don't have to have an office. And that is looking at my budget, I think that would be the most expensive, the largest expense that I would have. So I'm doing telehealth out of my bedroom, which is working just fine. Yeah. The biggest, my biggest overhead cost was insurance for my business. So that's one of the things that you'll research and become aware of, is that your individual professional liability insurance does not cover your business. So that's a little bit of a larger expense. And the provider that I decided to go with doesn't split that up into payments. So I just had to make like a lump payment for my professional liability insurance. But then otherwise, supervision is next up there as far as overhead costs. And then just my practice management system and telehealth, and then a few little tiny costs, like I have a website, so my web hosting, and my G Suite account, so I can have like an email through my website. But actually, yeah, like I said, it's a great time. Overhead costs, I think, are lower right now. So it's just something to be aware of. What I'm hoping, so I think like my sweet spot for people to see in a day is going to be 5. I feel like 5 is a good number for me. I can do that pretty smoothly. Once I start getting, 6, it starts to feel a little bit strained. And, I think ideally at some point, I would like to just be working, 3 or 4 days a week, seeing that many people. But obviously I'm going to have to raise my rate at some point to where I'm going to be able to meet my income goals to do that. So again, it's sort of that question of like how many people you want to see kind of depends on how much income you want, and balancing all of that. And what else did you ask?
You really kind of hit it. But
Okay.
to follow up with, if I could ask, how did you pick your oh goodness, I just drew a blank, whether you're using Theranest or Simple Practice, what am I asking?
Yeah, I just picked Theranest because I was an intern at the clinic and I knew how to use it, and I figured it would just be an easier transition. People seem to have their preferences, but as far as I can tell, there's not major differences between practice management systems, although I could be wrong. So they do free trials, like 3 30-day trials. So you can always sign up and play around with it and see if there's things that you prefer. But I just went with Theranest because I was familiar with it and it seemed easiest, and it's been working fine for me.
One less headache to have as you're setting everything else up.
Yeah.
Okay. So you talked about having to go find your professional liability, your business liability insurance, and that's separate from the professional liability insurance, which we can get through ACA membership. How about, what have you done toward developing your business? Have you worked with lawyers? Have you worked with, like, what did it take to kind of create your business entity?
So, this is something you'll research and decide for yourself. I really just wanted to make it as smooth as possible at the very beginning. So I'm just doing like a regular sole proprietorship, but I have plans to transition that to an LLC at some point to have a little more protection. So I feel pretty confident in my my research ability and stuff. So I just really looked stuff up for myself and talked to some people and made the decision at this point to just go for it without consulting with professionals. And, that's sort of, there's some risk there, obviously. But at some point, I think that's something like I will look at, but I just felt comfortable. And I felt like at this point, kind of where I'm at financially too, this was like an okay decision for me.
All right. So there's that ability to grow in the future and to tighten the reins down as you see where it needs to go. Awesome. Thank you. John, if I'm following the story right, you kind of developed this private practice around the time you got your internship license, right? So last February?
Yeah, so I kind of transitioned out of the business world. I was working with a consulting group, if you will, in Eugene, primarily doing kind of software installs for corporations, right? And I would come in and do the business process mapping, and I'd work with people and draw shapes on whiteboards and get paid gobs of money to do that. But the thing that I found myself being most interested in were the dynamics on the team. And so that's one of the reasons that that path kind of emerged in the consulting I was doing, and was like, well, if this is what I'm interested in, why don't I just go back to what I thought I was going to do 15 years ago, right? Before I'm kind of like Dennis the Menace, just kind of, wandering around before I get to where I need to go. So I had an LLC kind of set up. I kind of rejiggered it to do what I'm doing now. I haven't consulted. I really have leveraged the know-how of my my supervisor. She's been in private practice for 20 plus years. I haven't felt the anxiety, and frankly, I don't have the assets where I feel concerned enough about anything I'm doing to engage a lawyer in anything I do. But I know where to go if I need to get one. Yeah. And I think you just kind of have to gauge that for yourself in terms of liability. But yes, I started, to answer your original question, I started back in February, and was, I had actually got the ball rolling with my supervisor back in October, November. And then lined up this office, which is almost cheaper than my internet connection, on a month-to-month lease. So I just didn't want to be tied to anything, right? No long-term leases, no contracts for my internet. that kind of thing, so that I could bail if I needed to, and I wasn't kind of tied down to anything. I had that all lined up at the beginning of the year, and then started seeing clients in February, and then COVID hit March, and I started to sweat a little bit, but it's actually kind of worked out pretty well.
All right, well, you've mentioned two things that we definitely want to talk about. One is supervision and the other one is COVID. So which would you rather talk about first, John?
Well, I mean, I got to be honest, like COVID in my private practice, COVID hasn't totally done much of anything other than ramp up people's depression and anxiety. And so I think especially lately, my phone has been going pretty consistently. In terms of supervision, I've known my supervisor for feels like a million years. I've had a lot of respect for her and some other counselors that supervised her. We kind of work similarly. We have I don't know if you would call it trauma informed, but we do a lot of somatic work. And so we're pretty simpatico when it comes to how we approach the work. I approached her in November not knowing whether she had capacity to take on another intern or not. And it just so happened that one of her supervisees was going out the door. He's about a month away. And so she was able to slot me in, and it just kind of happened. And so it's been really great. Of course, you pay for your sessions out of pocket. And now that I'm over that 45, client hours a month or whatever it is, you have to pay for 3 sessions a month. But I've also been really fortunate, as Denise said, I'm kind of coming up to year 1 now, and you kind of have to decide, there's this balance between income and hours. Like, you can't forget that you have to accumulate hours, right? So that's part of the equation. I was approached by Henrietta Knox, who's a Christian counselor in town. She owns Arise Counseling Services over on Willamette. And she said, hey, I know you got your gig going. I know it takes a long time to accumulate hours. We're looking for interns. We've met. You seem like a good dude. You seem like a good fit. Why don't you come work for me? You keep your private practice a couple days a week. Come work for me. And I work for a percentage of what that allows me to go see OHP clients, basically, is what it allows me to do. They take care of all the billing and setup, and I get to see them. So I've done that for the past month. And boy, you think about, like, okay, I'm building my practice slowly. And then they turn on their wait list, and now all of a sudden my hours kind of overnight, like, doubled. Like, I am at capacity, and it took about 7 days. I was like, oh my gosh, like, make it stop. But I'm in a really good spot now to where I can churn the hours. I'm a little uncomfortable, like, it's stretching me to see this many clients, but I don't think I'm in that. What I'm surprised by is I'm able to kind of stretch into it, right? I'm able to kind of do this. And like Denise said, I know it's for, I don't want to do this 3 years, 4 years, 5 years from now at this pace, but for the next 20-ish months to get my hours done, I'm putting my head down and I'm going as fast as I can. So that's just kind of where I'm at.
Wow. Because both of you, John and Denise, you both had, you've talked about that. This is the goal. We need that 2,400 hours. We can take the 400 from graduate school, up to 400, those 2,000 hours. You need 24 months at least, but that you have up to 5 years to do it. But there's a definite benefit to getting that LPC kind of as soon as you can. So.
And those hours never expire, by the way. Like, I graduated 15 years ago, and the 300 some plus hours that I got at the clinic, were hours that I was able to carry. I was kind of surprised, actually. These things not get stale? Like, what's the deal?
I think I want to piggyback on that. I think for all the students, if you can sustain your mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, and intellectual health, and get those additional hours during internship, it is worth taking those 400 hours in, because you're a leg up as you begin your journey from graduate student to LPC registered intern to LPC. So it really does propel you forward quicker. And then if you take, I mean, so this is the accountant in me. I'm going to really just say this. Like I say, it's just math. Like everything's just math. At the end of the day, we can get caught up with emotions, or we can go, it's just math. Like, okay, 2,000 hours. Do I want to get it done in 24 months? Do I want to get it done in 36 months? And then do the math and then decide, is that the lifestyle I want? Does that work for me? I will tell you, had I not planned certain vacations in and certain pauses in my life, because there was a time that I was seeing a ton of clients. And if you're in a clinic and I was providing EAP and I was providing management referral, and I'm the only one with corporate executive experience, I got flooded. And, they were trying to put 6, 8, 10 clients a day on my schedule. Plus Medicaid is the hardest place to chart to. Now, the great thing about Medicaid, if you can chart to Medicaid, you can chart to damn it anything. Just feel confident about that. So if you can get that experience, it is great, right? However, I think there's I used to believe in my corporate days, like burnout's a state of mind. I used to work 80, 90, 100 hours a week. I traveled, I did all these things. And I loved my work and I worked with great people. However, it's very different work doing the work that we do as clinicians, as helping professionals. So as John and I were both saying, and I'm sure Jessica feels the same way, we want to sustain our life and take care of ourselves. And that is so critically important to being a good clinician. And it does, John's right, your hours can ramp up like this, and you have to take care of yourself and have really healthy, firm boundaries and know how to say no. I do not have a problem firing clients. I do not have a problem saying no, but I had to learn that in the wiggle and some of the discomfort of taking on too many or working 6 days a week and, trying to be, I can't be everything to everybody. None of us can, right? So I think if you're going to do both, like a private practice and decide to maybe work in a clinic setting or do something, John's sounds a little bit different. Let's be really real. Like for me to work at a clinic setting that's a nonprofit, you get paid terribly. It's like you might as well be working for free. You're going there. For me, it's very intentional saying, I'm there for this much time to get this many hours because it's part of my math equation. And I have the blessing that I could bring the clients I'd previously seen with me that still were on Medicaid. And it's such a service that is needed in our community. And with COVID, more people have lost their jobs, so more people have gotten on Medicaid, and there is a need. So there are some real benefits. So I kind of plunged in there, but I hope that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. And to piggyback, like, don't out of fear, don't quote unquote slum it and get paid terribly. Find some, like Henrietta's really, one of her values is paying her interns well. I mean, it's, it's not the top of my scale in my private practice, but it's not $10 an hour either. I mean, it's really reasonable. It's a livable percentage that I get from there. And then she is really generous with things like supervision. She pays for a session. She pays for training, even though the interns don't need to get continuing ed per se. It's one of her core values that, hey, take this class, this is out there, this is available, and we'll pay for it. So don't open yourself out of fear. Like, I got to get my hours, or I got to find work, or I got to find clients, and lead yourself into a place where you're not being compensated and not valued, right? Where like 10, I do see a lot of clients, but I do not see 10 clients a day. At most, once a week, I'll see maybe 7, topping out mostly at 5.
And that's a lot, John. Wouldn't you say 7 is a lot?
It totally is. Absolutely. It's a lot. And like 7 day after day I would fled, but I can kind of.
It's not sustainable if you're being I think like my mentor has been a psychologist longer than I've been alive. She does not see more than 6 clients a day.
Yeah.
Period, full stop. a therapist I respect deeply in this community. He works 4 days a week. He sees no more than 6 clients per day, and he more than makes
Oh, yeah.
very substantial salary, and he has a very comfortable life, and he takes every weekend a 3-day weekend.
Yep.
No matter what.
Okay. So I'm hearing some like really amazing goals here that I'm like, I can't wait to sign up for this. This is going to be great. But what do I need to know to get there? Right? I mean, I'm hearing know yourself, be honest, be authentic, set a plan, be very aware of what you're willing to do, for how long, be very aware of what you're not willing to do. I'm hearing a self-care component. I mean, a really large self-care component. But what else, you know, if you, all three of you, Jessica, John, Denise, you've been where I'm sitting, you've been where we've been sitting. What else do we need to know, or that you wish you would have known sitting where we are?
I think the question is, what are the questions you all specifically have? If we can answer that, might be more helpful, since we're all so unique and different, and we're all equipped differently, and we all have different levels of resilience and comfort levels as a clinician and as a business owner and a provider in the community. But Jessica and John, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it might be helpful if there's specific questions.
Yeah.
I would definitely find that helpful to speak to that.
Totally.
Awesome. Then let's open that up. Anybody else? What would you like to know? Michaela.
Question. So I know you guys have gone out in the community, you work at clinics. I think my biggest thing is really reaching out and networking. I know that's a big component for us, but I'm not from the area and I don't have any mental health experience. I come from marketing, so I'm more of like the business side too. But I don't, and I've been trying to network and trying to like reach out. I really want to intern at the state hospital, but like I'm feeling like I'm kind of have a hindrance because of that. And I'm wondering how you guys kind of made those connections, reached out, made those relationships, and really found the internship that worked for you. I mean, I know this isn't a private practice question, but it's kind of something I really am wondering.
Go for it, Jessica.
Yeah, I mean, so I was recruited for the internship at the clinic, but I think I can still speak to your question in other ways. I just don't let that lack of experience, be a hindrance for you. Like, I think enthusiasm and interest goes a really long way. And if you can communicate that interest and passion and what you can offer to them, as far as like, the networking I've been doing for my private practice, I think it's sort of the same as that, right? So I approach people with like, I want to learn about you. What can I do for you? How can we connect? So, I don't know if that's super helpful, but I think those principles still apply, like not letting that lack of experience hold you back, and just figuring out like how to communicate why you're so interested in it, and like what you're hoping you can contribute.
So Michaela, I didn't have any experience either. I think so much is this right here, right? What is the story and the narrative I'm telling myself about my ability, whether I know anybody or know no one? I knew no one in the field of mental health. When my professional colleagues were like, you're going to grad school for what? They were like, have you lost your damn mind? Do you know how much money you make and what a great life you have? And I'm like, yeah, I know all that. And I feel like this is where I'm called to be at this season, and I'm going to trust that. And I discerned and prayed and meditated about it for over a decade. And so sometimes we take the big leap, right? And I'm not from Eugene either. So I would say supervise what's going on here and make sure this and this are aligned really well. And if what you want is the state hospital, go ask the professors. There's plenty of I had 3 people in my class who did their clinical rotation at the state hospital. And the faculty are tapped into this community. So be brave and bold and courageous enough to, and believe in yourself enough to go ask the faculty, like, I want to look here, I want to look there. I'm like Jessica, I got recruited for at least 5 positions within this community, knowing no one in mental health, having 0 mental health experience, a full business background. My resume, they're probably like, what the what? What is this girl thinking that she's gonna get a job in mental health, right? So the one thing I think that was very helpful was, and I assume the university is still doing this, but NCU had a very large internship fair back in just only several years ago. And so we were really able to go and mingle and meet all the different clinical supervisors. And for me, I was interviewing them as much as they wanted to ask for my resume. And if I got a like, you're a creeper vibe, I was gonna get my resume. And if I got like, oh yeah, they seem like really cool, or I like their philosophy or their style, or then maybe I would have further conversation. And there's nothing wrong with being at choice and going and having 5 opportunities presented to you and then getting to choose. And that very much could be your reality, whether you have mental health experience or not, and whether you're from the area or not. There is such demand for good, capable, kind professionals. You're going to be all right. I am happy to answer any questions too offline for you. I never wanted to work at the state hospital. I mean, God bless you. But the faculty at NCU, now Bushnell, do have a lot of great contacts in this community.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think you probably are in an advantage coming in after having, I mean, I think the faculty's turned over a couple times now since I've been there, and the program's changed quite a bit. But I would leverage who you know in your program, and not only who you know in your program, but who they know. For me, networking can sound for like an introvert like this big spooky thing. And I kind of think of it as a micro kind of deal, right? Like I connected with a guy named Scott Waters in town. He's been a therapist around here. He introduced me to Henrietta, who then turned around and said, hey, you should come work for me part-time. It's not so much a broadcast thing. It's just getting in front of the right people who you resonate with, who say like, hey, I see something in you. I want to work with you. And then you know, it only really takes one person, right? And frankly, when she said that, I was like, no, I got my own gig. I want to do this on my own. And then I did the math, like Denise said, and I was like, gosh, I could be doing this for 3 years, or I could be doing this for like a year and a half. So that it kind of made the decision for me, right? It took the emotion out of it, like I want control of everything, and it put it on a spreadsheet, and it was like, no, I want to be done. I want to be done with my internship so that I can kind of get on to the next phase and have more of the income and more of the calling the shots. And I also knew that I didn't want to go work at Looking Glass or whatever. Like I had been down those roads. And so when I really looked at what was before me, it worked. Again, to go back to what the question was, you can spend a lot of time, trying to do lots and lots. And I would encourage you maybe to think on more of a micro level, like talk to a few people and see who they can put you in front of, and just figure out what resonates for you.
I wholeheartedly agree. Create your strategic plan just like you did as a marketing expert. You know how to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think it is a little bit imposter syndrome. You go like this in grad school, like I'm good, and then nope, no, okay, no, so I appreciate that.
That question. Yeah, yes, go for it, Dominic.
So like Michaela, I'm not originally from Oregon, so I've been here 3 years, so I don't know if I can call myself Oregonian yet. But I love Bushnell. Like I love the faculty. I love everybody there. You all sound super great. So I love all the connections I've made through the school, but I don't really love Eugene. And so I live in Corvallis right now, and I've been commuting to Eugene for the last, couple of years. I'm getting kind of tired of it. And so I'm kind of stuck right now. I have a really awesome internship, and I have a feeling that they probably are going to offer me a position. They have a lot of great resources and training available. They are one of the nonprofits that doesn't pay super well. So I'm looking at trying to maybe stay on there a little bit, but then finding another clinic to go to. And so I'm just kind of, I guess my question is, how important is it to keep coming to Eugene and making Eugene kind of the spot, because all of my network is there, compared to like me going somewhere else and maybe loving being in Salem or closer to Portland? I don't know if you have insight into the cities or different areas or what you would suggest, but.
I don't know if it's a geographic, again, I think it's you likely know people in Eugene who know people in Salem, who know people in, right? And so ask around, like, this is what my interest is. Who can you put me in front of? Who are your contacts? Like, can you do a email handoff for me? So again, never underestimate who your people know, and then also never underestimate their willingness to help, right? And I also have some ideas about that. So maybe we could take part of that offline, because in Corvallis, there are communities like kind of up that direction in Lynn County that are being Albany is a good example, right? That are kind of being underserved right now. So I think there's options there. If again, just kind of hopscotch. You may not know, but somebody probably knows.
So Dominic, I think your question, if I heard it correctly, was how important is it that I stay in Eugene? Was that the bottom line? Okay. Where are you interning currently? And you graduate next month, I remember.
Yeah, I'm at CAFA right now.
Okay. Great training organization, good people, right?
Exactly.
It's okay to stay at a job, if they offer you a position and you want to commute for a while and that feels right in your head and your heart, fine. And at the same token, it's not a black and white either or. If that feels right and you want to continue to work there and they offer you a position, even if it's low paying and you feel like that fulfills your heart and it gets you professionally going, and continue to network and resource. So if you want to be in Corvallis or Salem or explore other cities, I too am happy to be a resource and talk offline. Gene James at NCU is from Corvallis. He knows the needs in Corvallis. Like Albany and Lynn County, they're growing so much. There's so much need. Salem is the biggest trauma hospital, right? It's just plummeting with demand. So if Eugene isn't your gig, you don't have to force a square peg into a round hole. Don't stay in Eugene. If you want to say temporarily, that's what I'm going to do, you have to be loyal to you and follow your hearts and listen to your truth.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
I was hoping we could circle back to something Denise brought up and the challenges of charting for Medicaid. I'm wondering if you guys have advice or resources or tools that we could use to start developing the skills to do the difficult charting that meets requirements for things like Medicaid.
Tiffany, are you currently in practicum or internship?
I'm at the tail end of practicum.
Sweet. And do you have your internship lined up?
I'm going to be in the clinic.
Oh, at the clinic. So you are going to use they're still using Theranest? And so I would say that from my experience, and I was over at Peace Health, it was my primary clinical rotation, and I very intentionally chose that out of the options that were available to me. I did come in and do some specific cases at the NCU clinic, because we all can, even if you're at a different offsite location, right? And when the dean at the time came and asked me, I did do both. It was very different to do Theranest charting versus Medicaid charting. Your question was specifically, how do you prepare yourself for it? So first of all, I think that it's easy to get the mindset that it is difficult. And for me, again, like I had no mental health experience, right? So all this charting was like a foreign language to me. I just thought it was so bizarro. So my learning curve was like this. And people like Jessica probably, she said, if I recall, she had 10 years experience. So her learning curve probably wasn't as steep as mine. So first of all, we have to give ourselves all a little bit of grace and have a little bit of laughter, because it is just that. It is, and Medicaid charting changes all the time, especially after an audit. And it also depends upon the EHR you're using, right? So at Peace Health, they're using the biggest daddy of biggest daddies of Epic. Then at clinics, they might be using something like Simple Practice or Theranos or Therapy Notes. Or then a more medical / clinic model might be using Hilo, ECW, other models. So we are adjusting electronic medical record systems versus electronic health record systems. Often the EHR side is more directed to behavioral health and psychology, psychiatry, versus very medical model. So just remember that. I think, again, some of it's kind of like speaking with Michaela, for all of us, is working right here, right? What's the narrative we're telling ourselves? And you can definitely translate the charting you're doing within Theranos into Medicaid. It just looks different, right? You have to have your start time, your end time. There's certain details of the client's practical data that you have to have in a chart. There's a certain way you have to sign your name with your credentials. There's a certain way you code to the DSM, right? Because in Theranos, for example, you could use a Z code as a diagnostic impression. Well, you can't bill for a Z code, period. You have to bill an F code. And there are certain F codes Medicaid doesn't pay. You know, so there's all these nuanced things. Or what does the treatment plan look like? If you are taking certain classes with Ryan, right, he's like going to say, what's the problem? What's the goal? What's the objective? What's the measurable outcome? How long is it going to take? Learning some of that. The truth is, every place that I've charted with Medicaid does it slightly different. And John, probably for the first time charting for Medicaid right now, is finding that out. I don't know what system Arise is using. However, it is very different. There are certain standards you have to have in your template. And the CCOs can modify certain aspects of it. So I wouldn't be scared about it. I just am saying, if people have the opportunity to learn, and if that's somewhere in your career trajectory you think you might want to do it, it's great to learn it in internship, because you can fall down and pick yourself up and fall down and pick yourself up. And you have some supervisors who really assist you. I think asking for really honest feedback, one of the hardest things for me in graduate school was I kept asking for feedback, being that I hadn't ever charted in this world of mental health. And they didn't give me concrete feedback. And having formerly been a manager who gives very concrete feedback, I found it very frustrating, because it didn't help set me up for success as much as I would have liked going into internship. So then learning to chart the way the medical model wants it, and when a psychologist has to co-sign my chart notes, because when we're an intern, not a registered intern, you know, there's things you have to do for billing. I had to learn a lot, and I probably had some painful lessons, to be totally honest. And then once I found some of the resource books and some of the tools, and I could read some of the treatment plans, or, you know, today's concerns, or what we worked on, and treatment modalities, various things, it really did help me. But I wouldn't be scared. I would encourage you not to be scared by it. Just practice of what makes sense, and I guess my mindset is less is more, and yet what needs to be in the notes, so that if I'm seeing 24 to 30 clients a week and they don't come back for 3 or 4 weeks, I know this person who's going to come in front of me. So how do I concisely do a biopsychosocial in that first chart? Does that make sense? I hope that isn't too boring or like too much information.
No, it was very helpful. And I think that you kind of nailed it for me. I don't know that I've gotten concrete feedback that I can build on or make changes from. So that encourages me to now ask some different questions in supervision. Thank you.
Yeah, be specific about, like, is it that client reported da 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 da. Client stated da da da. Do you want to use quotes? Do you not want to use quotes? Do you want to say they examined this? They reported that. They reflected upon this. You know, every clinical supervisor has a different philosophy. That's the other part that you'll juggle. But
That's true.
Jessica and John, what do you think on that?
Well, Tiffany, I interned in the clinic too. So I think like Ryan's a really good resource when you're looking for specific feedback. So if he's not your supervisor, just even emailing him and saying like, hey, I really want to make sure that I'm nailing this. Like, can you look these over and give me some concrete specific feedback about what I need to do?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, he is my supervisor.
Oh, great. Great.
Jessica, I 100% second that.
And then again, just lean wherever you land, like, you know, beyond I think the mindset of less is more is important. I know starting out, it's like you want to write a novel, and then when you see more people, it's like, okay, that's not going to work. So really less is more, and then lean on, like for me, going from private practice to Arise was a little eye-opening. However, and they even kind of tried to prep me like, oh, we're still, you know, it's in, you know, the practice is only 18 months, you know, we've only had this practice for a year and a half. So we're still trying to figure out how to orient new employees and stuff. And I went in going like, oh, okay, this is not going to be good. They were fantastic. I've worked for full-blown businesses that had less onboarding, quote unquote, than they did. They sat down with me and said, here's how we want you to do your chart notes. I was like, fantastic. And I don't have a dog in that fight in terms of opinion. I'll do it. You want me to do it this way? I'll do it that way. You want me to do it some other way? I'll do it this way. Just tell me what I can do to see clients and just kind of crank through these and move on to the next person. I think that's a really healthy mindset, right? Everybody's got an opinion about it, you know, and it's largely dictated by things that are out of your control. So just do what you need to do and move on.
Thank you all so much. That helped a lot.
One last question about supervision and kind of building that, you know, like one of the things that I've heard to be aware of is you're off in private practice, you can feel alone, you can be isolated. It's easier to not have the oversight that we're used to coming, you know, for someone who goes directly from graduate school internship into registered internship, trying to do private practice. Any advice toward overcoming that?
So I think picking your supervisor is another place to be strategic. So what's important to you? Like, do you need someone who has like a theoretical orientation that lines up a little more with you? Is that where you want, you know, is that where you want the feedback? Like, do you want someone who really knows like laws and rules and board rules? Do you want someone who's going to be really like enthusiastic and encouraging? Do you need more of a cheerleader? So really thinking about what you want and need, and interviewing supervisors, if you don't know what their style is, interviewing them and finding a good match for you. That's what I did. I picked Ryan because I'm looking for more of the like someone who knows the board, someone who knows law, someone I can turn to in a crisis, right? Like I feel pretty confident in my clinical skills, and I can go other places for like encouragement and cheerleading and stuff. So I want someone who's like 100% going to be there for me and be available, you know, and that was something I strategically chose for a supervisor.
Excellent. Bring up an interesting point though. You know, the supervisor, you pay for the hour. Are you able to hit up like, hey, I need to staff a case now? Like, can you do that?
That's something you'd want to ask your supervisor that. So Ryan's totally open, right? Like we have I'm under the 45, so we have 2 hours scheduled every month, but you know, he sort of considers himself to be like on retainer. So if I need to call him, you know, or there's certain cases where I absolutely have to call him, right? If someone's threatening suicide, if there's a crisis, like he wants me to call him. So that's something I would interview your supervisor about, but I would hope most supervisors have that policy. And if that's something that they don't have and it's important to you, that's definitely a red flag.
Excellent. Is there I'm trying to remember what the breakdown is between individual and group. Is group an option once you graduate?
It is, but not for all of your 3 hours. I think you can have 2 of your 3 in group and 1 has to be individual. Well, depending upon how many clients you're seeing. You can be, if you're under the 45, you can only have 2 hours of supervision. And I believe 1 can be group and 1 can be individual. However, some supervisors you do not save any money with group supervision. And some you do. Again, those are the questions like Jessica was saying, do your due diligence and ask those questions. And again, really trust yourself in making a decision of who your clinical supervisor is. It's a really important relationship. They are not your therapist. They are your clinical supervisor. And get clear with yourself about what is it that I need a clinical supervisor for, right? Like I had 2 clinical supervisors, so I felt really blessed. They were very different in style, and I'm really glad I had that. I also have a mentor who is beyond over the moon, brilliantly fantastic as a human and as a clinician.
Have any of you found it isolating to be in private practice?
No.
I love how just direct that was, like, no, okay, all right, moving on.
But I mean, like, no negative connotations necessarily with that, but yeah, it definitely feels isolating. I think that's something you have to assess about yourself too when you're looking at going into private practice is, are you someone who thrives on sort of having more like group dynamics where you can like go to someone's office and check in? Are you someone who can motivate themselves when you're sitting in a room alone? Like, these are things to kind of know about yourself. I think like Denise was talking about earlier, like really knowing, who am I? What can I tolerate? Like, where are my strengths and weaknesses with this? Because you're on your own, you know, in a lot of ways. At least that's how I feel. So I have to find other ways to try to make connections with people and make connections with other professionals.
John, did you unmute there?
Yeah, I don't know that I was in like solely private practice long enough to feel isolated, and now I certainly don't, kind of working partially at Arise. I don't. Yeah, I really coveted and wanted the autonomy to a certain extent, the independence, not autonomy, but the independence. And man, I really have enjoyed that. I like it.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Any other specific questions hiding out there?
Do you have any thoughts on going into private practice with a partner, maybe a cohort graduate member, or just sticking with being solo?
I would, as long as you do your due diligence and really know who you're going into business with and have very clear understanding. I mean, so I'm trying to be politically correct here and think about how I want to say this. I'm not always politically correct. So there is risk to a partnership, right? There is risk. And if you are considering partnership with another, I do think that is the place you get proper consult, like with a CPA, with an attorney, that you have the partnership outlined and detailed, who owns what, who's responsible for what. I mean, there's just a lot of details that go into it. Now, mind you, I will say I am anal retentive by nature. So and it's not because I'm nervous or anxious or worried. I just like to be anal retentive, and that's how come I got my first degree in accounting. Like, I like numbers and I like the details. and I like sometimes to overanalyze stuff because I think it's fun. And it's super nerdy. And that's probably why I also love the research part of grad school. So with that said, though, you know, there's some partnerships that are like a match made in heaven, just like there's marriages that are like a match made in heaven. And then there's some that are like a match made in hell. So I think you really have to know yourself and you have to know your partner and make sure you have somebody assessing it from the outside as well, if that's what you really think you want to do. because I have seen colleagues who have been like a pseudo partnership or a partnership, and then the shit hits the fan and it's stinky and it's smelly and it's messy because they didn't do their due diligence up front. So I'd say due diligence, due diligence, due diligence.
What's the potential upside for you? Like in contemplating that, like what is it that you're
Good question, John.
trying to achieve?
I think it's maybe it relieves some of that isolation piece because you're not alone and you have a partner to make decisions with and get support from and be in the office with potentially, and also someone to go in on the cost and share it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm biased. Again, you heard my spiel about independence, right? So they're as allergic as I am to social media, I'm allergic to this idea of partnership for all of the reasons that Denise just mentioned.
Yeah, you are married, John. So
Huh?
I said, yeah, you are married, so you're not totally allergic.
Yeah, no. For a long time, I couldn't do what I'm doing without my partner saying, "Yeah, go see people." But what was I gonna say? So yeah, I don't know. To me, just from the outside, like pardon my French, but you can find a really shitty office that's really cheap. Like you really, you don't have really modest, you can really do this on the cheap, right? And then absorb those costs if you can. I mean, pencil it out, right? Do the math. Sometimes what having a partnership is it's justification to spend more money on a 2-office suite than a crappy basement office somewhere. So really, I can see somebody in a garage. I mean, I don't care where I see people, right? So I think having a really lean mindset when you're starting out is probably beneficial, and really evaluating how much company do I really need, to really hitch myself to somebody when I could pick up the phone with one of your cohort mates and say hey, can we go grab a beer or a coffee? And then I'm really not a commitment phobe, but you see what I'm saying? To me, it's gosh, that's not enough upside for the risk involved, right? I want to do my own thing. So I don't know.
I would say really assess, and that's that discernment piece. That's that due diligence of, am I coming from a place of fear, or am I coming from a place of abundance? Or is it the scarcity or the worry that's motivating my decision to be in partnership versus a sole prop or an LLC, or there's all those different things that you can do. But I'd really ask yourself, how come I'm doing what I'm doing, and what's motivating me? Really ask those deep questions to yourself. And you have plenty of time. You're just about to start your internship, so you don't have to make any decisions today.
Yeah, and I agree with everything that's been said. I actually had multiple offers from classmates to partner on private practices, and I said no. Also, with what Denise is saying about asking yourself those deep questions, is there other ways to meet those needs too? John was saying, you can just call up a colleague, right? Or I've considered, can I keep my business separate from a colleague's business? But maybe we do get office space near each other, or maybe we do collaborate on ideas and stuff, or maybe we do share forms, but all the business part of it is actually kept separate. So just thinking about creative solutions to meeting some of those needs that a partnership might fulfill, and seeing if there's other ways to do that, or if you really truly are comfortable with that risk. But when I started thinking about it, there is so many places where things can go funky, and it's just, I think it's really hard when you're first starting out too, to really consider all those ways that it could go funky. So maybe that's something that you're more comfortable doing down the line, or when you have more assets and resources and you can hire an attorney, you can draw up contracts and stuff. But yeah, think really, really careful. I would think really, really carefully about it at this point.
And test it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, John.
Well, one of the ways you can find out is hey, maybe we can do a seminar on marriage together, or maybe, you know, go in somewhere and do a project together where it's not a long-term thing. Like, we're going to co-teach this class on parenting skills. Figure that out. And then you actually work with the person. You're like, oh my gosh, like, this is wonderful, or this is not so great. So yeah, test it out.
And I think the other thing, as Jessica attested to earlier, starting a practice in COVID is the costs are very minimal. And telehealth I've offered telehealth from the very beginning. So when COVID hit, I was one of the first clinicians. I was like, peace, I'm doing telehealth because nobody's getting me sick, because I take care of this vessel. And I want her to be well and strong and healthy. So it was comfortable. And because of my corporate life, I worked and traveled so much, having my laptop and being remote was a no thing. So telehealth is very reasonable and your costs are very modest. So I would think about that as well. And we potentially could be at this a longer duration than a few months. It could be many months. So I would say consider that as well. And you're getting good experience. Every student, I would assume, with telehealth right now and getting comfortable with it.
Absolutely. Michaela, you had a question, I think.
Oh, I just wanted to kind of piggyback off what Tiffany was saying,
like why I think a lot of us are considering going into business together. I mean, I obviously don't know a lot about what private practice entails or even what that would look like, but I know that there's a lot of clinics where our talents complement each other, or like we're you know, our theoretical approach and theirs are maybe different, but we can attract more clients that way and refer and build an actual business together where we can have like satellite offices. And I'm kind of thinking my business plan, like I want to have this bigger private practice and then possibly have like satellite offices in remote areas. And that would be great for if somebody was like wanted to work with women and I wanted to work with children, that our whole private practice could have this huge scope. So that was kind of a benefit that I was thinking. I don't know if that's even, obviously that would be in the future much later, but that was kind of something that I was mulling over when I was thinking about partnering with people.
Excellent. As the chat comments are saying, it's this idea of sharing a space, but having independent practices. It's an interesting ideas, especially if there are different niches for each person. And then to have that kind of group word of mouth referral for, hey, yeah, no, Jessica's fantastic with self-compassion, and Denise, if you want to go deep, woohoo, go to Denise. And I think there's kind of a lot of potential there while minimizing the risk. And I really, really appreciate, again, just this theme of authenticity, of knowing yourself, of really questioning what you want out of something, what your fears are, looking deep within yourself and actually figuring out what is going to serve your needs the best. Looking at the time, we are almost at the 9 o'clock hour. This has been a really informal, I am so really informal, what was I going to actually try to say there? Very, really helpful. Obviously, my brain is trying to quit for the day, and I beg your forgiveness on that one. But thank you for taking this time to come tonight and to speak from your hearts, to bring your expertise, and to just share a little bit of your journeys with us. Before we end, Michaela, if you'd like to speak a little bit about our next panel, just real quickly.
Yeah, so as we said, this is actually going to be a monthly panel where every third Thursday of the month, we're going to be bringing you a different topic with different experts in whatever topic that is. So for December, it'll be December 17th at 7 p.m. We're going to be talking about, of course, there's going to always probably have a little COVID off conversation, but basically we're going to be bringing you community resources and response. So we're going to be bringing people from the community. We're looking at somebody in addictions and possibly vocational rehab, someone who works with veterans, a teacher as well, an educator. And so we're going to talk about what resources are out there, how's that changed since COVID, and how we can utilize that as counselors. So we hope to see you there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michaela.
And just sorry, one more thing. If you haven't joined our Facebook group too, that's where you'll find all the information, the Zoom links, you know, all the reminders. So it's the new Chi Upsilon Facebook, and you're welcome to just join that group, and then you can stay updated. So
fantastic. And I would like to say that CSI is an academic and professional counseling honor society. So you are able to re-up your membership as professionals, as NCU/Bushnell alumni, and be able to come and be part of the CSI experience and maintain that. So we'd love to have your membership, love to have you at the panels, and something for Jessica, John, Denise, Bodhi, also people who are on this journey ahead of us. I will just a spoiler alert, working on in my next year as past president, we're going to be definitely working on a mentorship program within our NCU chapter. And I would very much like to kind of reach into the alumni group to help mentor students. So maybe be prepared that there might be an email dropped your way in the future toward leaning into this potential resource. Michaela, thank you for bringing these professionals to us today. Thank you for your work for the panels. I'm really excited about next December's panel. Jessica, John, Denise, thank you again for taking this time out of your day, especially knowing how expensive your hours are. I mean, like, thank you. So
Thanks for having us.
please.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. Well wishes to all of you, and a peaceful and healthy holiday.
Wonderful. Thank you all so very much. Officer teams, if you would please stay for a brief debrief, I'd be very grateful. And everyone else, happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays. Be well.